Hey guys, I have no introduction for this because literally you already know what it is. I'm going to be looking at every movie I saw in September this last month and reviewed in 1 minute or less. And of course, as you know the rules, these are just films I watched on TV, nothing I saw in theaters since those I can just make posts off of. These are all the movies I watched at home and reviewed in about a minute or less. You know the rest. If you watch the other videos, which I think you should if you want to watch this one, or if you care actually, then just accept it. Go. Let's get started. You ever imagine Justin Timberlake as an action star? I didn't either. In Time is a story about a future world where everybody has a limited amount of time labeled on their arms. It's a weird kind of action film. It has some good action moments in it. There's a fly on my screen. I'm sorry, but overall, I gotta get rid of that fly. Whatever. Overall, this movie's okay. I mean, it has some good action moments. Justin Timberlake can provide a good performance, but at the same time, like I said, he really isn't the best choice to play an action star. I mean, I guess you could respect it for not being a cliche like Harrison Ford or Tom Cruise or Keanu Reeves or whatever. I mean, it's nice for a new choice, but still, he mostly is meant to just be on the stage doing weird dances and having weird vocal cords. I don't really know him as an action star works the best, but still, this was a good, okay at least, so we can at least respect that. From good old Robert Rodriguez, along with his buddy Quentin Tarantino, From Dusk Till Dawn is a weird horror film about two guys who hold an entire family hostage. And it seems the first half of this movie goes as like a simple crime film, like something you'd see off of Quentin Tarantino's form. But then the second half is where Robert's style comes in, where they go to a bar. It seems all fun and sexy at first, but then vampires start forming and all hell breaks loose and turns into a very crazy horror flick. Yeah, I know. The transition in this movie is certainly a mess, and I actually had no clue about it at all. I only saw this movie because I saw that it had Clooney and Tarantino as two crime stars. That part all I knew about. The rest was all for me to figure out. It was fun, but definitely a weird time. It was weird in all ways, and yeah, that big transition certainly was weird, messed up. A comedy featuring Adam Sandler. I don't know why I watched it, but Funny People is considered to be one of Sandler's more serious comedies. One of the comedies where he actually does have a serious idea towards it. And I do like that. I like seeing a comedy where Adam Sandler doesn't waste so much time trying his hardest to be funny, actually can go for a serious role. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say this movie's great of his. I mean, it's no uncut gems like what he has in the future, but it's still an alright film. I mean, it's definitely better than most of his comedies for the time, but apart from that, the film has an okay idea. Its comedy that does exist can be okay. I mean, they do throw in good comedy from the other stars like Seth Rogen or a bunch of others. But, overall, this film definitely is one of the better Adam Sandler movies, at least. So even if it's not great, it's at least still passable for his career. And I know a lot of you are like, oh, but Adam Sandler's funny. I don't think he is. So here's Constantine. Good old Keanu Reeves is playing a DC character in a very scary type of surrounding. But unfortunately, I just couldn't find much enjoyment. Constantine is not really a good movie in my opinion because I seem to have trouble understanding what we're supposed to be focusing on. I mean, I guess it's supposed to be about this Christian type of hero who goes against the evil. I actually don't remember much of what I was supposed to get out of this film, and personally, I consider that a problem. Maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention and I should have, but I just didn't really find much to get out of this film. There wasn't a lot to it that I was able to follow. Really, I just didn't think that this film gave me the hype I was hoping for. I mean, I guess maybe just because it's not an awesome DC guy, but he just isn't someone that I appreciate. It just didn't come out that great. A Jason Bourne film. What better Jason Bourne film than a Jason Bourne film where Jason Bourne isn't even in the goddamn movie? I know, I'm sorry, but The Bourne Legacy, starring Jeremy Renner as this random new character, really upset me. I know they're trying to focus on the whole how other characters are affected by his style, which I guess you could say on the one hand does make for a cool, unique idea. but in my opinion, it comes off as lame and not really interesting. Like, I don't really care much about how all these other characters are. I mean, maybe it's just me, but really, I think for a Jason Bourne franchise that's all about Bourne, it should be about Bourne. Because even if there are other characters who have a life to focus on, those lives should be focused on in that one movie. For an entire film that just focuses on that character with Bourne not even present at all is what bothers me. I just really couldn't like this film because there just wasn't enough that I cared about. I wanted to see more Bourne. Oh, good old Jack Black. While we all, of course, know Jack Black for his comedic roles, there was a time, and I think maybe still now, I don't know, where he actually had his own rock band. Him and Kyle Gass formed a band called Tenacious D. I hadn't really heard much of their songs, but then I saw this movie. Tenacious D, a not so memorable comedy, takes these two into a weird, all over the place adventure that's honestly a lot of fun. This movie's pretty funny, not just from Jack Black's side, but also a good chunk of comedy comes from his partner, Kyle Gass. They both make for a pretty fun duo, and a comedy where these two just portray a weird version of themselves for their rock band or whatever really comes off as fun. There's a lot of weird moments, and it's definitely all over the place, confusing, but it's just there to give us some good laughs and be all crazy and whatnot. Well, by the way, Dave Grohl appears as the devil, but that's honestly the best part. Seriously, this movie deserves more love. It's just awesome. JFK, starring Kevin Costner, a film about a guy who's so encouraged into the conspiracies behind the assassination of John F. Kennedy. While the movie definitely does follow an interesting idea, maybe I just couldn't follow it enough to give this movie a greater score like other people. Most people called it extremely offensive and very inaccurate, but personally, I just don't really care about that. I really just cared about how most of it focused on this one plot that went on for a whole 3 hours. Yeah, the movie's 3 hours long. You don't like it? I'm sorry. Personally, I guess the runtime wasn't really something I enjoyed. Apart from that, though, I can't say this movie's awful. It still definitely provided a fun, interesting premise. It definitely did look more forward towards this one character and not just the idea of the character, so I can give credit to that. Apart from that, though, there really isn't much else about this film I can admire. It's just a decent type of film. A comedy, a rom com, Forgetting Sarah Marshall is one of those interesting types. This movie really could have turned out much better. Unfortunately, I'm kind of upset it didn't. While the movie provides some pretty fun moments, we got Jason Segel and Mila Kunis as a couple, which honestly they worked pretty well. Just gonna say this right now, the match between these two was pretty great. It was unfortunately the final act that kind of ruined it when they kind of went for the whole "oh you betrayed me" thing. But apart from that, the movie still provides some fun moments. Most of the fun came from how great the chemistry between these two are, just how interesting this character is. He starts off depressed, but goes on to try and get more character depth, so I can at least appreciate that. So really, this is just a simple rom-com that worked great, but honestly, I kind of wish it worked better. Still, though, I think the movie still worked out fine, and it's definitely the better Hallmark movie, so we can at least appreciate it for being better than every Hallmark movie my mom's seen. Sin City. Remember when I said I hated the movie 300 and I hated how Zack Snyder enjoyed that kind of style? Well, it turns out I was wrong. It wasn't really Zack Snyder to blame. Rather, it was the creative genius behind the original comics, Frank Miller, who also worked on Sin City. And the reason I give this movie a bit of a higher score than 300 is at least because, despite the weird camera angles, there was still a little bit more to it that was passable. The acting was good, and some of the action worked better, so even if it still didn't look as appealing, there was still some better moments towards it. Still, though, I wish I could like this movie more. I guess I'm just not a big fan of Frank Miller putting that weird type of style as a live action feature. Maybe I'm just not too towards it like other people are. So I apologize for it, but I'm sorry. My tastes are weird. I have weird tastes. Chris Hemsworth is not Ford this time. Now he's a race car driver. Rush tells the story about a race car driver and his rival, who both seem to have a lot to go through to their rivalry of cars. I personally consider this to be like a more serious version of something like Talladega Nights.
You know that fun comedy with Will Ferrell and how hilariously crazy it is? Well, this movie's, in my opinion at least, is like that, except it's serious. I know it's supposed to be based on a true story, which it is, but it definitely still feels like Talladega Nights, just with a more serious side. I guess that's just how I feel. Overall, the film had some good moments, and really, I think Chris Hemsworth provides a pretty good performance. I definitely do want to watch more of his non-4 movies, as I seem to focus too much on watching him as the God of Thunder. He has a lot more to his career than just that. I mean, not a lot, but there's still a good chunk of other roles he should be known for. Maybe. I don't know, but I'll definitely watch more of his. Good old Robert Rodriguez is back again for a film with Antonio Banderas. Desperado, an action film featuring the sexy Salma Hayek, God, she's a bombshell. Desperado is a fun little action film where Antonio Banderas portrays this guy who definitely goes out on a limb to protect everybody he meets and to kill everybody he doesn't like. Something like that. I can't really understand what the big new twist to this film was, but I enjoyed it mostly towards how fun this character is. I personally don't feel like that this one character made up the best part of this film. The rest of the movie was fine, but I think this character alone is what gave it a good passing score. Everything else about this movie was either decent or not really well memorable, so I can at least appreciate this one character. I definitely want to check out more of Rodriguez's stuff because so far I've been knowing him for Spy Kids, and that's not something we should know this guy for. He has a big career ahead of him. Oh god. Die Hard has been an interesting franchise, with the first movie being a classic, the second one being decently decent, same with the third and fourth one. And now we have the fifth one, the one that everyone considers the worst in the franchise, which I certainly couldn't agree more. But that said, as much as I don't like this movie, I don't hate it as much as everyone else does. A lot of people call this a huge disaster of a movie, but me personally, it's not that bad. It's still bad, but it could have been far worse. It's not like god awful. It isn't like one of those movies that completely ruins everything. It definitely still follows an interesting road. It's definitely still keeping up with the tradition, but at the same time, it does have a lot of lameness to it, and it really is underwhelming. So yeah, I'll say that, but still, it wasn't terrible. It just didn't work out well, at least for me. So at least I can give it that praise.
So the good news is that's going to be the last one for now. The next video will be something different, and I won't be doing this shit until the end of this month. So thankfully, you don't have to worry about me doing this anymore for a while. By a while, I mean 2 weeks. I know. I'm sorry. I just don't have anything better to do in my life.